And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another disappointed episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers fall in overtime to Florida State 69-67 in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. The loss drops Indiana to 3-2 on the season. It was a game, as we're going to talk about, that it's just going to feel like a missed opportunity for Indiana. Obviously a tough matchup in a lot of ways for Indiana, and a lot of positives to take out of this game. But I think we're going to look back on this one as one where Indiana really could have and should have won this game with a little bit better offensive execution and some better choices down the stretch. But alas, it goes into the record books as a loss for the Hoosiers, and we'll break it all down for you right here. I'm your host, Jerod Morris, here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And we're going to break down this Indiana-Florida State game for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's start the show the way that we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. And for the banner moment, we're going to go to overtime. A lot of big plays in this game, but with Indiana down 67-65, Trayce Jackson-Davis stepped up in a big way, as he did the entire second half and really the entire game. One thing that we'll take away from this game is that Indiana's defense was really, really solid. It wasn't perfect, but it was really solid. And when Indiana needed stops to give themselves an opportunity to, get a bucket or get back into the game or preserve a lead, a lot of times they were able to do it. Didn't do it on the final possession. Scotty Barnes got him a couple times there down the stretch, but really a lot of possessions down the stretch, they really played solid defense. And on this possession, with Florida State up 2, Trayce Jackson-Davis, helped out Armaan Franklin. Armaan had good on-ball defense. Trayce comes over from the weak side, gets a huge block shot, ends up resulting in a shot clock violation for Florida State with 17.3 seconds to go. And then Indiana gets the ball offensively, and Archie Miller draws it up for his All-American, for Trayce Jackson-Davis. Trayce Jackson-Davis gets it out on the left wing, drives in, gets fouled, and now has to step up to the line for 2 really pressure-packed free throws, and he knocks in both of them. Really had a nice night from the free throw line. It tied up the game at 67. Obviously, Indiana could not hold on to that lead, but Trayce Jackson-Davis gave Indiana absolutely everything that they could ask for from him tonight. He had 25 points, 17 rebounds, 2 block shots against a team with a lot of length and a lot of athleticism, the kind of game that as recently as just last week against Texas, he really struggled in. And tonight, I think Trayce really showed some growth in terms of ability and willingness to finish strong, to play through contact, to get to the free throw line, and after a really poor rebounding first half, I thought really came through in the second half and did a better job rebounding. So, Indiana lost this game. I think it needed some better decision-making, some better plays from the guards, as we'll talk about. But Trayce Jackson-Davis did everything he could to put his Hoosiers in a position to win. Unfortunately, they just came up 2 points short. All right, our banner moment tonight, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, who is now in their 4th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call. And, with Christmas right around the corner, you need to make your way over to their website, homefieldapparel.com. They have something unique for everyone on your shopping list, especially for IU fans. And all of their apparel is printed on the softest, most comfortable, and most washable materials that you will find anywhere. If you need a few suggestions, these are items that I have personally purchased that I wear regularly. Of course, the world-famous Bison hoodie, was just wearing that this morning. The oatmeal hoodie with the Assembly Call logo, that's always a good option. And then the Indiana Script hoodie. Yes, I like hoodies. Yes, I wear them a lot, even though I live in Texas. What can I say? Home Field Apparel, they make the most comfortable hoodies that there are. So go there, find a good hoodie for yourself, for the person on your Christmas gift that needs something, especially with winter here and the cold temps coming. And remember, at Home Field Apparel, it's not just IU gear. If you have anyone on your Christmas list that went to another school, Home Field may well have gear for them too. They serve fans from Akron to Xavier, Hawaii to Pitt, and from Hope College to the Colorado School of Mines. And their designs are so unique, interesting, and vintage that you may end up like Coach, buying shirts and hoodies for schools you've barely heard of just because you like the design. And you can always save on your Home Field order by using the promo code Assembly20 at checkout. It will give you 20% off your entire order throughout the year. Now, don't hesitate. Get your orders in soon. In fact, they're saying get them in by December 10th, which is tomorrow from when we are recording this, so that you ensure that you receive them by Christmas. Again, homefieldapparel.com, load up your shopping cart, enter the promo code Assembly20 at checkout, and get 20% off your entire order. That's homefieldapparel.com. All right, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And we will go to the coach, Brian Tonsoni, first. Coach, what's on your mind after this IU loss?
It's disappointing because I thought there were opportunities for Indiana to win this game in regulation. I thought there were opportunities to win the game in overtime. And a game like this against good competition, it comes down to who's going to make the plays at the key moments. And Florida State made them at home. They hit some shots that were guarded. They especially the last one. But there was a step back three in regulation that really wasn't a good shot that they hit. And credit that the fact that the first half was in Florida State's favor and they dominated offensive glass. The second half was in Indiana's favor. Indiana dominates the offensive glass in the second half, but OT, it was all Florida State. And I thought that's what's frustrating is when you go on the road against the top 20 team, probably maybe the best team in the ACC and have a chance to win. It'd be nice to come away with the win. There are a ton of positives to come out of this, but you play to win the game, and Indiana didn't make enough shots or make enough opportunities to win in a big-time game. But it was a big-time game. It wasn't a Texas game. It wasn't a no-show for 19 minutes or something like we saw on the road before. So maybe we can take some positives out of that going forward into some tougher games.
All right, let's go over to Ryan and get his rant. Ryan, let's try to keep the rant basketball specific, even though I know that there's a ton of football stuff you could rant about today. We'll save that for the end of the show, maybe.
Yeah, I'll stick with basketball here. Look, I think it was a great effort by Indiana, and I think a game a lot of people thought Florida State would command. And Florida State is a really good team, who's going to give a lot of teams trouble this year. I thought Armand Franklin defended that last play as well as you can defend it. Scotty Barnes just made a great shot. And quite frankly, when you're whatever height Armand Franklin is listed at and Scotty Barnes is bigger in a guard, he just got the shot off over him, which is the downside of having smaller guards. But I'm going to talk about why Indiana lost this game and should have won it. It was the offense in overtime. First possession of overtime, you get the ball to Trayce Jackson-Davis. He attacks, scores, gets fouled, goes to the line. Last possession of overtime, you get the ball to Trayce Jackson-Davis on the wing. He drives in, gets fouled, makes 2 free throws. Other than that, Indiana didn't score in overtime, and the reason why, they did not force feed their best player as they should have. They ran a lot of pick and roll for him, and he rolled. They should have done what they did on the last possession about 4 possessions earlier, and that's just get him the ball on the perimeter, clear out, and let him work on a bigger, less athletic guy and get fouled if he has to, or at least his drive might suck Florida State in, and Florida State was playing really aggressive on perimeter man-to-man all over Indiana's guards, so they couldn't get clear shots. If you drive Trayce Jackson-Davis, either he's going to be one-on-one with a guy he's better than, or everybody's going to collapse and you're going to have more open looks. The other problem I have was, and Rob Finney hasn't been doing this year, but it's something he did a lot last year, and I know Archie Miller gets frustrated by it. In overtime, he was walking the ball up the court, barely getting across the timeline with 1 second left. That gives you 20 seconds to run your offense instead of the 30 you're allotted, instead of having 25 seconds to run your offense. And what happened in overtime with Florida State playing very aggressive defense? There were a lot of late clock situations for Indiana. You could have added 5 seconds to Al Durham getting the ball on the wing, trying to drive, and maybe being able to pass instead of having to force up a shot, or Armand Franklin throwing up a jumper or whatever. You would have had more time to work with. Rob has had that bugaboo since his freshman year of just wanting to slow everything down when, no, get across the timeline, get your offense running, and let's get to work. And if you have to run through it a second time, you have to run through it a second time. Give yourself the time and the leeway to make a mistake in there instead of having to force up a bad shot throughout your offense. Indiana's overtime offense, I thought their offense worked hard for most of the game and was running the way it was supposed to. They were just playing a good defensive team, and you're not always going to get a great shot. That's just something that happens. I thought they missed some open looks, all of that stuff. In overtime, I thought it reverted to last year's offense a lot, and that was a problem. It just felt like a lot of, oh, there's 10 seconds left, we got to do something. Oh, there's 8 seconds left, we got to do something, instead of having a plan to move the ball and find the next guy. Some of that is Florida State, but I also think some of it is getting into the offense so late and then not having a plan to get Trayce Jackson-Davis the ball other than a pick and roll to the basket where they were over defending, and Florida State made some nice adjustments. When they make that adjustment, you have to adjust right back. And I think part of that's on Archie Miller. He should have, I know he only had the one timeout, but he should have switched it up and just said, give Trayce the ball on the wing, as they did on that last possession, and it worked. You'd rather go down losing with Trayce Jackson-Davis with the ball in his hands than anybody else on that floor. So I just felt like some of the shots were forced. I felt like they just slowed down too much. This is an up-tempo game. You know, you got to beat Florida State to the spot, you know, instead of letting them set up their defense and be exactly where they want to be. So again, The main takeaway is Indiana went toe-to-toe with what I think is going to be a really good team and maybe the best team in the ACC, and you learned a lot about Indiana even though it was a loss. But there's reasons to feel bad about this game. And not only did you lose, but you could have won and had a pretty good chance too late, and you kind of let it slip away.
The one thing I will say is that Florida State had 2 shot clock violations in overtime, so their offense wasn't good in overtime either.
No, it wasn't.
These teams battled so hard, and then
here's the thing, Coach.
Scotty Barnes hits a 3 that is 27 feet, and he hits a shot. There were more shots made under duress by Florida State. Indiana, I agree with what you're saying, but we took Florida State out of them too.
What's the difference between the two teams, though? Is that Florida State can lean back on shooters where Indiana can't. Yeah, and so you can afford to have some bad offense if Scotty Barnes is going to hit a 25-foot three-pointer, or MJ Walker is going to do something, or this is going to happen.
But Leonard Hamilton didn't have a good –
No, that's fine.
The offenses were horrible in overtime.
And not disagreeing. And part of my point is actually that Florida State sets you up if you run good offense to win the game by not running great offense. They got a tip in, or they got a rebound basket. They got that 3-pointer, and then they got Scotty Barnes' shot. That's all they did in overtime. Indiana's defense was phenomenal all night long and will be throughout the season. This is a legit juggernaut defensive team. The only issue is the offensive rebounds they give up, which Archie Miller pointed out at the beginning of the season is going to be an issue all year, especially with Joey Brunk out. The second unit is going to have issues with that. And he said that in the turnovers. I thought the turnovers got way better in the second half and overtime as well. I thought that, the ones they had were not as egregious as they should have been, other than the Trayce Jackson-Davis backcourt bad pass. He's an All-American. We'll let him have a bad play here or there.
Indiana outplayed Florida State in the second half, and they didn't finish.
Agreed.
That's the bottom line. They didn't finish when they had an opportunity to finish. And then the things that hurt us, offensive rebounding, the inability to get downhill, all reared its ugly head in overtime.
And so, some missed open shots. I mean, look, Rob Finney, one of 5 from 3, and about 4 of those were good looks. I think Rob Finney can shoot. I think he was rushing because he was playing a much more athletic team than he's used to, a much longer team. He's a smaller guy. I think he was rushing through his shots. But quite frankly, you got to make some of those. You can't go 4 of 15 from 3 and expect to win on the road against a really good team.
I will also add to that 11 for 23 on layups, and Florida State was 13 of 22 from layups. This was a defensive slugfest that made the offenses look ugly. They just had a 6'9" guy, freshman, who made the plays kind of when it counted. They had a step-back 3 in the second half that was heavily guarded by a post player or a guy that was playing the 4. It just comes down to those few plays. But that's why you take care of business and stretch out a lead to 6-7 when you can in the second half.
And while we're doing just a smorgasbord here, the officiating in the second half and overtime was horrific. I mean, there were some bad calls both ways. There was a charge Indiana took I think it was Al took, where it was just like, come on. Really? I'll take it, but come on. And then, just the jump ball that they then give a timeout. So the possession arrow is for Florida State. Armand Franklin clearly falling backwards, but falling backwards in bounds, calling a timeout. He was calling the timeout so we didn't travel, not so we didn't fall out of bounds. Some of those drives where they gave foul calls in Indiana where guys were literally standing there with their arms up, not coming into their space at all. It was just, and we texted in our group text, we said, oh no, they're going to even the fouls up now, because it was about 7-1 Indiana. They're going to even the fouls. Every call is going to go against Indiana, and then offensively, unless it is an absolute murder, they're not going to call anything. And that's pretty much how it played out.
You guys have gotten very comfortable with my absence. Now, even when I'm here, it's like I'm not here.
You really got to jump in the mix more.
Yeah, things have really changed on the show.
Who are you? What are you doing on my screen?
Yeah. So let's talk about the guard play. Because look, if you're going to win games like this, you've got to have guards who make plays, who make, stop me if you've heard this before. You got to make shots. At some point you got to make shots. Florida State made some shots. We didn't make some shots. The one guy that we had making shots, Jerome Hunter, didn't really get any looks in the second half, which I find a little bit surprising. I get he maybe gives up a little bit defensively, but we'll save that for a later segment.
I thought Jerome played well, quite frankly.
He did. I thought he should have gotten more minutes. Here's what I want to say about the guards. And it's tough. I was really worried going into this game about this matchup for Rob and Al. It's the kind of game that they've gotten totally played out of in the past because it's physical, it's against guys that are bigger than them, and they haven't always brought it in that kind of a situation. And I thought for the most part tonight, what you said, Ryan, is very true about Rob not pushing the ball up. I think that's part of the reason why Archie likes to have Armand play point, because Armand will push the ball. But I thought Rob and Al really tried more than we've seen in the past in this type of matchup in the half court to attack the defense off the dribble, to get into the lane, to try to create shots for themselves and for other guys. Like I saw tonight stuff from them that I've wanted to see. I'm just not sure they're good enough in a matchup like this. Like I thought they were trying to do some of the things that you want to see, and I'm just not sure against this level of athletes that they're good enough to do it. So I don't like I think the some of the choices that Indiana made in terms of sets they're going to run and that type of stuff needed to be better. But I don't really come out of this saying, like, there's decisions here or there that all those guys needed to make better.
Yeah.
But I kind of thought those guys came out there and gave their all, and it just wasn't quite good enough. I just think they've got to get better. Our guard talent has to get better overall, which is why I think we need a guy like Lander to step it up. But those guys just don't.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I think that's fair. I mean, I get your point. It's just like they went up against better, more athletic, longer, bigger guys and did what they could. And I think that's fair. But here's the deal. This is what Indiana has.
Yeah.
And Indiana should be able to win this game with smarts, guile, whatever. Who's the one guy Indiana has on the floor that is better than everybody else on the other team? Trayce.
Oh, for sure.
What does that mean? Give him the ball. Do whatever it takes to get him the ball. And that's on, by the way, there were post entries there some, and I know they don't want to force anything and they don't want to give it a live ball turnover, but there were post entries there in overtime that they kind of spun around, kicked it around, maybe trying to find a better one. But at that point, when your offense is that slow, their last field goal was at 4:38 in overtime. So 22 seconds into overtime is the last time they scored from the field in that game. Maybe you force it in sometimes. It's got to be on those seniors to make that decision. I mean, Al made a drive late where he just drove into three guys and, trying to get a foul. And it's like, I love Al Durham and I love his aggressiveness, but right there, that's not the place to do that. In an even game in overtime, that's not the spot to try and make a ridiculous drive into three guys. In the middle of the first quarter, you want to do that, try and draw a foul, maybe get a bucket, try and get guys fired up. But you got to, as a senior, you've got to have a better understanding. Armand Franklin, I think we've praised him a lot, and I think his development is incredible. There was a time where he took a ball on the baseline and just drove into nobody, drove into a group of people, but drove to nowhere. And it's in a tight game. And it's like in a tight game, I know he's a sophomore, but you want this responsibility. You're an amazing defender. You want to play as much as you're playing. In a tight situation, you got to make a better decision than that. I'm not saying bench Franklin because of it. I'm saying you got to learn from that and not do that again. And there's a couple times, guys had, 3-pointers. Like Rob pulled whatever his name is, the big guy, out on the floor and took a 23-foot 3-pointer. Now he stepped into it, but Trayce Jackson-Davis also had a guard on him in the post, and he easily could have driven past the guy guarding him. It's, they're just decisions you've got to make better than what they made. And again, we're nitpicking a game, the fifth game of the season where they played really well. And the takeaway is Indiana can go punch for punch with a really good team. Florida State's ranked 20th. They're ranked 20th because they've only played one game. They are probably the top of the ACC. Let's be real. And Indiana went punch for punch with them. That's good news for the future. But you can't just feel good because they played with a good team.
No. What I will say, though, is if Rob and Al and Armand take this attitude and this aggressiveness into most games against most teams, they're going to get better results than they got tonight. And I am taking a little bit of solace in that those guys didn't bring the decision-making, didn't bring the shot-making that you need in a game like this. And for the most
part of the game, I thought they did make some good decisions.
But if they carry that to games against teams that don't have this level of athletes, it's going to help Indiana's offense. And tonight it just wasn't good enough.
I see people in the chat citing the field goal percentage numbers and stuff like that. They were playing an insanely good defensive team. I don't expect them to hit 50% of their shots when they're playing a team like Florida State. And if you look at Florida State's guards, it's the same way. I mean, it was a bad night for everybody offensively. Why? Because the defenses are really good. So it's not about, Durham was 3 of 10. I thought he played a good game, and a couple of those misses are things he had to shoot sort of late in the clock. Franklin was 3 of 9. Do I think he played a bad game? No, I think he took a couple of shots he probably shouldn't have, but I don't think he played a bad game. Finney, 2 of 10. I'm not complaining about the way he played. His defense on MJ Walker was fantastic for most of the night. Like, it's It's just the situation they're in, playing a really good athletic team. And I will say this, if you stack Texas and Florida State up next to each other, I think they are even squads. I think they are pretty much even squads, athletic guys, really a lot of length, strong, whatever. Indiana came out tonight and played very differently than it did against Texas. And if they bring this effort and this intensity on both ends every night, we're going to end up happier far more often than we're upset with this team.
They beat Texas with this effort, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I agree with you. They're very similar teams, but I think this effort against, it's hard to run your sets against a team that plays this kind of pressure, and they were switching, and that was giving Indiana a tough thing because a lot of times we try to run some sets, some back cross screens to get the ball into the post. Those things weren't available tonight because they were just quick switch and everything. What do you do against quick switching teams? You go downhill. I thought our guards tried to go downhill. When they got to the rim, they didn't finish. The most upsetting thing for me is when the offense does create an open shot. I mean, no one within 5 feet. Those got to go down at a higher percentage. And I know we can talk about practice drills and shot doctors and all that, but if you're in college and you're not being contested and it's not a late shot clock, bailout situation, that ball's got to go in at a rather higher percentage than what it's going in. You hit 2 of those open. I mean, Armand got an offensive rebound, stepped into a 3 and missed. There's a couple kickouts for a wide open 3. I bet you there were 4 or 5 of the 15 threes that were really wide open where no one even
first
had
possession of the second half, and Armand just airmailed it.
Yeah. I mean, total air ball.
Yeah,
that's one. So Armand had at least 2. I know Rob had 1, and I know Al had a kick out for 1. So there's 4. You hit open threes at 25%, you win the game in regulation. That's where the frustration comes in. You fight hard. The guards are overmatched, and they brought it. They brought the intensity. They played good games. They didn't execute well. They brought effort, and they didn't execute their shots, and that's what's frustrating as a coach is you were right there on the road. That and then some early not into the game, the first 3 minutes of the game, not in the game, getting down 8-2. You can't look past that.
No,
giving up 2 offensive rebounds off of free throws is inexcusable. And then the second half, we gave up 7 offensive rebounds. So I also think the team wore down. Our depth, we only had 8 players, and the minutes were really limited because it was a tough game for Lander today, I think, and we'll get into that. But I think mentally – and they got fatigued, and they stopped doing what they needed to do in that overtime until that last ball for the free throws.
Yeah. No, and let me say this, and somebody in the chat mentioned this, and it's true. There's no excuse for missing wide open shots. I'm not excusing that. I'm just saying that against athletic teams, guys rush, guys get sped up, and they do. But there's no excuse for going 4 of 15 from 3. There just isn't. They need to be better than that. There's no question about that. You make 1 more 3, you win the game. I mean, think about 1 more. And there were several open ones they had that they missed. You make 1 more and you go. And
a guy on the bench who was making them and was ready to shoot.
I mean, why isn't Jerome Hunter
find the guy some damn shots? I know
they've moved Jerome Hunter to 4 and everything. But you're telling me that Jerome Hunter couldn't eat into some of Trey Galloway's minutes tonight? I mean, Trey Galloway did not play well. We'll
hold that thought. Hold that thought. Let's get into that because we need to talk about that. But let's take a break here. All right, coming up as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's 69-67 loss to Florida State, I will point out today's meaningful moment that you might have missed, and we will go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game and many other storylines. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
What's up, y'all? It's Devontae Green giving you the green light to watch Assembly Call after every IU game. Just don't listen to their opinions about shot selection. Remember, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Go Hoosiers.
Could have used that guy tonight. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni. We are breaking down Indiana's 2-point overtime loss to Florida State. And it's time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. There's a couple that I want to point out. The first one is the end of regulation. And I think if you're looking for the biggest positive to take from this game, it's Indiana's defense. This is a bona fide top 20 defense now. I think you see those first couple games, you kind of wonder. I'm pretty convinced that this is a much better defensive team. I think watching this team now, they look so much more fluid and flexible on defense as opposed to the stiff pack line that we saw for the first 3 years. I think that's about personnel. That's about the institutional knowledge of the defense. It's about Archie kind of adjusting things a little bit this year. But the defense just looks better. And if you go back to the end of regulation, 51 seconds to go with the game tied, desperately trying to keep them from scoring, and they can't score. Now, the rebounding wasn't very good. The ability to corral loose balls wasn't very good, but the defense itself, in terms of forcing difficult shots, was good. And then right there at the end, 6.6 seconds left on the baseline, and Armaan Franklin just makes a tremendous individual play to steal that ball. Was trying to call timeout as he falls out of bounds. And then once Florida State gets the ball back, the very next possession, they get the inbounds. Armaan's guarding the guy, and he walls up on a drive, forces a long two that they miss. And so defensively at the end, so often tonight when Indiana needed to stop, they got it. Now, again, they didn't always get the rebound, and they didn't do enough at the end. This was a game where the defense needed to be a couple possessions better because the offense wasn't going to be better. And if you're going to hang your hat on defense, then you do have to point out, a couple possessions at the end where they didn't get it. But I thought that there were a lot of things to be pleased about with the defense, and I think the growth of the defense is really, the biggest storyline, here early in the season. Now, the other meaningful moment that I want to point out is all the way back from the first half with Indiana down 13-10. Jerome Hunter gets in, and there are games when Jerome Hunter gets in the game and he has fire in his eyes. Like, I think we've been on the Jerome Hunter experience long enough to know there's some games when he's just kind of out of it and he fouls out in 8 minutes, and there's other games where he comes in ready to make an impact. Tonight, as soon as he stepped on the floor, he was ready to make an impact. He had a great defensive possession, preventing a drive, and when Jerome's playing good defense, he's down in a stance, he's moving his feet, he's cutting off drives into the lane. He did that tonight, grabbed the rebound, and then goes right down to the other end of the court, drains a three. And you could just tell all half he was shot hunting. But he was shot hunting from the perspective of a guy who was red hot because he was 2 for 3. And I just kept waiting in the second half for them to run something for him, get him an open shot. For God's sakes, you can't make any shots, but you've got this guy over here that looks hot, and you have to know as a coach by now that there's games that he's just fully locked in. For the life of me, I don't understand why he didn't get more minutes and why he didn't get more shots. And if you're looking for the difference in a game, in a 2-point game, to me, you look right there. You have got to ride Jerome Hunter when he's hot, because right now it's kind of an inconsistent thing. So that really jumped out to me. And, we can talk now a little bit, Ryan, I think, and you guys feel free, obviously, to point out your meaningful moments, but, you alluded to this in the last segment, so maybe we talk about it now. Some of the minutes that Trey Galloway got tonight, I love Trey. He plays his butt off. He was out of his depth tonight. And Jerome Hunter was a guy who came to play and has the length to compete in a game like this. I don't understand why he didn't get more minutes and more shots.
Yeah, let me just say, Trey Galloway is going to be a really good player for Indiana. I like his attitude. I like his personality. I loved watching him in high school. I think that he's a legit attacker and all of that. But if you look this season, I know we all remember that first game where he was a breakaway, he was making circus layups and all that stuff against Tennessee Tech. But other than in transition, he's really done nothing in half-court offense this year. Nothing. And has been really bad at it. And that's because he's a freshman. Let's be real. I think he's going to be fine. But he's a freshman.
And he can't make shots.
And he can't make shots. And there are times where you'll see him get the ball and basically hand it to the guy next to him because he's not where he's supposed to be as far as the spacing goes. He's cutting a little too close to the other defender, and that makes it easy to defend, and it throws off possessions. You'll see him drive into crowds and try and make a pass to the corner. It's like, Trey, in a couple of years, in maybe a year, you'll be able to do that and be able to make that assist and all of that. So I just want to say that off the top. I think he's going to be good. I just think that right now, playing against these yoked dudes from Florida State, he was out of his depth. I mean, they defended him so easily. If he's not getting out in transition, he offers you nothing offensively right now.
And they drove on him every possession.
And then I was going to get to that. On defense, he couldn't guard anybody. They're too big, too fast, too strong. I mean, they did this against Texas did this. And who was the other one? Stanford did this. They sort of clear out the side and just drive on him because he's not quick enough yet. He will be. In a year in a strength and conditioning program at IU, he'll be fine. But this game was above his level. And that's fine to admit. He is a kid right now. He is a kid who just got on a college campus. It's fine to admit, hey, Trey's going to be big for us. He's not the sixth man tonight. He needs to move down the bench a little bit, and you need to put Jerome Hunter out there because if Trey's offering you nothing on defense and nothing on offense, Why is he playing? I think it was 12 minutes in the first half. He played a lot of minutes in the first half, and he got abused in the first half repeatedly. So, again, I think I like this kid's future. It's the same as Lander tonight. Lander was just he was out-strengthed tonight. He was out-strengthed, out at too much athleticism. He's gonna be fine. But right now, this was not the game if you want to win it. Now, if you're just going there to get everybody minutes and get some experience, that's different. But if you want to win this game, you got to pull those guys back a little bit. There'll be games to get them experience. If you were down 15 in the second half, I'd say put the kids out there. And if you were up 15 in the second half, I'd say give Lander 5 minutes here, see what happens. Give Trey, 6 minutes, see what happens. But when you're in a dogfight like that, you cannot be sprinkling in guys who don't belong on the court. And tonight, Trey Galloway did not belong on the court with those guys. He'll be fine. But right now, when he's overmatched in certain games, Archie needs to pull back. And I know he loves Trey. And wants to get him experience and get him ready for the Big Ten season. Some nights, if you want to win the game, you got to pull your lineup back and change the plans midway through. And tonight, Trey, he didn't have it. And that's fine. That's not any problem. But yeah, I think that Hunter should have gotten some of those minutes on the perimeter. We know how he knows to play on the perimeter. He can give you at least a threat from three that would help open other things up. So I think that was the way to go is to move Trey out and give Hunter more minutes, because I think he earned them. I thought he looked fine defensively too.
By the way, one other moment that I just wanted to. Oh, Coach, you want to have a point on that?
No, go ahead.
Well, the only other moment that I wanted to point out, and then Coach, I want to know what you think. Back in the first half at the 2:25 mark, do you guys remember the drive where Rob drove into the lane and looked like he just turned on his rocket boosters and just exploded to the rim and got fouled? It reminded me of that dunk that he had his freshman year at Northwestern, where it's like, you can fly? Where's that been? And I wonder why he's hesitant about doing that. He's had so many injury issues. I wonder if he's a little reticent attacking the rim with that kind of abandon. And obviously you need a little bit of a runway to do it, so you're not always going to be able to do it. But he sometimes drives in with such feeble attempts at the rim, and you just kind of wonder, man, if you use that athleticism a little bit, because you see it in little spurts like that. But anyway, that just stood out because it's like, man, a little more of that, Rob.
Yeah, and I thought Rob at times was really aggressive tonight. And then there was one time where he went into the lane and made a fall away sort of late in the clock. And I thought that's actually that's kind of a fine shot for him to take. I don't mind him taking that any time. I mean, it's not
like a Chris Paul shot.
Inside 7 feet, he's always been pretty darn good. So, when he gets a clear shot, not, if he's driving up against four people. But yeah, I did think that was fine. And here's the one thing I will say about the shooting woes is that you've got to steal those extra points somewhere. If you're not making threes, you got to steal those extra points somewhere. And Indiana did a great job getting to the free throw line tonight and stealing points there and making them. They hit 75%, which a year ago, I mean, Hoosier fans would have been in tears for 75%. So 21 of 28 from the line. Everybody shot pretty well. I know Finney missed that one late, and if you make that one, maybe you win on the next possession. But I mean, but across the board, Franklin was 3 of 4. He's not a great shooter. He hasn't shown to be a great shooter, but he's made his free throws 3 of 4. Durham 2 of 2. Thompson 3 of 4. Trayce was 9 of 12. Really improving himself for the next level. And then Finney was 4 of 6. I memean, that's way better than you were getting last year. And it's been consistent that they've been better free throw shooters this year.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, though, I agree that Galloway was a coaching clinic on Hamilton. Every time he gave the green light to everyone who had Galloway, and he was going to drive Lander. We did the same thing with Barnes. We put Barnes in screens and rolls and slipped in the first half. That's why we were doing it. It was back and forth, coach to coach. But Ryan, we only played 8 guys. If we pull Hunter and we pull Lander because they're not ready, which they're not ready, we only play 6 guys. Without Brunk. So there's more to just, I agree with you. Those guys got abused. They're not ready, but you got to play someone. And the other options were 2 more freshmen. So
give Hunter some more minutes. I mean, bump him up to 25 tonight.
Yeah, he only played 16.
They've made a choice, right or wrong, and we can debate that. They've made a choice not to play him at the 3 as a guard, and Galloway can play for everyone there. That might be a thing, an adjustment that needs to be made. But Hunter was the one sub for.
You got to adjust to the game,
Could be, but he's not playing the 3. So
I agree.
But you can't play 6 guys against 4. I mean, we had 38, 30, 40, 40, and 34 minutes between the starters. We didn't take Finney out, in 5 minutes of the overtime. And they wore down, and that's part of the reason too. So, so there's a lot that goes into.
I get it. No, I get it.
You got to eat some minutes somewhere. You got to eat some minutes somewhere.
At some point, I'd rather try Jordan Geronimo out there than Galloway, who's getting abused. At least he's athletic enough to be on the floor. Maybe he grabs you some rebounds. Fair. You can mix it up. Give him 2 minutes. If he does nothing, take him out. You've got to at least, and maybe there's something where they plan to have these guys play and they prepared for these guys and all of that. I get that. But at the same time, this is about the third game in a row where Trey Galloway has been overmatched. You've got to start making some decisions. Yeah, it's going to continue, and that's part of being a freshman. It's part of being a freshman who isn't a 5-star.
You're on the road against a top 20 team. You're getting ready. You're going to go 10 times on the road in the Big Ten. He's going to have to play at some point. You got to get him out there, get it on film, fix it, and you still almost won. Now, a couple meaningful things that 5 3-pointers that Florida State hit. Listen to this, 5. One came off a missed free throw blockout by Race Thompson, who I thought blockout tonight was really, really bad. I thought it was one of Race's worst games overall, and he had 7 rebounds and I think 6 rebounds and 9 points. But I thought his blockout in overtime was bad. I thought his blockout throughout the game was really, really not what we're used to seeing with Race. But that was early on. And we get down 8-2. Then there was a loose ball where Indiana was hustling. The ball got knocked out. It fell to someone on the wing at 15-22. A loose ball, wide open 3. They hit it. That was number 2. Trey Galloway, the guy we're discussing, guards the guy with his hands down. The guy had clean vision of a 3 and rose up right above him. That happened also in the overtime with Armand Franklin. He's guarding the freshman. Yes, he was out a ways, but when your hands are down and you're not disrupting time, route, and vision, guys are more likely to hit shots. That was the 4th one. And then there was the step-back 3 by the guy Trayce Jackson-Davis was guarding, and he had a hand up, and a guy hits a shot that was guarded. So those are 5 of their 8 threes, and that's the difference. They made shots when the opportunity presented to himself. When we would get a good drive and kick in an open 3, our perimeters did not hit the shots at that time. And there's several aspects of the game that cost us. But for me, that's the thing that you miss is our defense was great, except hand down on 2 times, and good teams will make you pay. That's why you've got to have perfect possessions every possession, and you coach to have perfect possessions, and that's why film is going to be really big. Yes, 95% of the possessions were great, but there were a few that were lackadaisical, unexcusable, lack of fundamentals defensively that cost IU some points defensively, in my opinion.
Hey, Coach, you know what makes up for a couple bad defensive possessions?
Shots.
Hitting a 3. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
it turns momentum, changes the game. You look at it 4 of 15, and we harp on shooting all the time on this show because we all could shoot, and coach is a coach and he sees it. But here's the thing. It's 4 of 15 and you lose by 2. I mean, you make one more shot.
Well, okay. So on that
maybe
point,
2, maybe 3, and it's a solid win, and you're jumping into the top 20.
Yeah. So on that point, let's talk numbers. A couple of numbers that are going to be really important to watch for Indiana this year. Look, I think our 3-point shooting will improve. I think it will. We're not going to be this bad all season long. We're under 30%. It's going to tick up. Florida State obviously plays really good defense, and we weren't able to step up and meet it. There's no excuses for it, but I do think there's reason to believe the shooting will get better. But it's probably not going to get a lot better. And there are going to be a lot of nights, especially against the good shooting teams in the Big Ten, where we are at a disadvantage from the 3-point line. Stop me if you've heard that before. So what do you do if you are not a team that's going to win at the 3-point line? What do? You have to win with shot volume. You have to save possessions. You have to either get to the free throw line more, or you have to get yourself more opportunities to shoot, which means you get offensive rebounds or you win the turnover battle. Today, if you want to know why Indiana lost this game, you look at their offensive rebound and turnover numbers, like just Indiana's, and they're pretty good. Indiana got 15 offensive rebounds, a lot of really important ones. Trayce had 7. Indiana turned the ball over 14 times. In an overtime game, that's not bad. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably at least 20.9%, which isn't great, but they had 7 within the first few minutes, 10 minutes of the game.
5 after the half.
Yeah, so they did a better job there. But here's the problem. If you go over to what Florida State did, they had 19 offensive rebounds, and they only turned it over 10 times. So not only were they shooting better from outside, they were just getting more opportunities. And that's the formula for this Indiana team. If the 3-point shooting doesn't improve by a lot, they're going to have to rebound better. Archie's talked about it a ton. I think the guards are doing their part. Tonight, I think it was Race. Trayce really picked up the rebounding, but Race just wasn't quite there like he normally is. And they've got to take better care of the ball. If you're not going to make up for turnovers with 3-pointers, then 14 and a percentage of 20.9 is just unacceptable. And you've got to get it down and get it down. There's give and take, and there's formulas for every team to win. And tonight, those two numbers really jump out at me because even though you can kind of look at Indiana's as a little bit positive just based on the context, Florida State's were better, and those are numbers that are going to be very determinant of IU games this year.
At one point in the second half, Indiana had 14 offensive rebounds to Florida State's 10. They only had one offensive rebound for like 18 minutes of the second half, and then in the last 2 minutes, there were last 2 minutes of regulation and overtime, 6 offensive rebounds by Florida State.
There were 3 on one possession.
So when they go 19, 6 to 7 of them were in the last 6 minutes, 7 minutes of the ball game. And to me, that was the difference there. But again, they're inside the numbers. They were getting killed in the first half, made a change at halftime, and only gave up 1. But they didn't take care of business. They didn't capitalize on their better defense. They didn't capitalize on their better offense. They didn't capitalize on rebounding better because of inefficient offense and missed shots. And you got to take care of business when you're playing well on the other end because it just turned away from them in overtime. And yet they had to hit a game-winning shot at 4 seconds. So it wasn't like a 10-0 overtime either.
And defense makes up for a lot of deficiencies. The fact that they got those 4 opportunities at the end and didn't score is a credit mostly to the defense. But the thing is, you're putting so much pressure on your defense to be perfect every time. And guess what? You're not perfect every time. Guys make mistakes. Guys get juked. It just happens. There's another team trying to outmaneuver you. I will say this is that a lot of the offensive rebounds were created by the fact that they had Koprivica out there when he was out there. Even if he didn't get the rebound, they had to pay so much attention to him because he's a 7-footer and he's big and he's got some skill that other guys were able to dive in and get offensive rebounds, and they did the smart thing. What did they do? They attacked him. They went after him and got him in foul trouble. He only played 21 minutes. He was +9. He was their best. When they were on the court, they were better than when he was on the court, they were better than Indiana. They got him off the court. Indiana has done a good job this year targeting good players, getting them in foul trouble, and getting to the line, and for the most part, as compared to last year and the years before, making their free throws. That's going to be a big thing for this team when they enter Big Ten play. They cannot let up on that. Guess what? They're going to run bigger guys at Trayce Jackson-Davis and Race Thompson. Those guys have to outwork their competition and get in positions where the opposing team has to foul them or give up an easy bucket. They got to get post players on the other teams in foul trouble. And you know what happens then? Then the rebounding battle shifts. Because when you get the bigger, better players out from the other team, you start to rebound the ball better. That's going to be a key all season. Trayce Jackson-Davis needs to be in attack mode. He's going to get calls because he's an All-American, and Race Thompson needs to contribute to that as well.
Yeah, that's the last number that I wanted to point out, which is 1 and 1. That's the number of blocks and the number of steals that Race Thompson had. And look, I know this isn't a game where Race is probably going to get a ton of block shots because of their size, but it's a good Race Thompson game when he's got 2 blocks and 3 steals. Like he's kind of like Juwan Morgan, where defensively when he plays well, you see a lot of blocks, you see a lot of steals. If you want to, we always talk about how plus minus is really a flawed stat for a single game. Race Thompson led the game in plus minus at 11. I'm sorry, that does not match the eye test. He played 34 minutes, only took 5 shots. Race is a junior now. He showed us what he's capable of. The expectation bar has been raised. And Trayce needed his running mate tonight. And I just thought for too much of the game, Race was kind of invisible. And in a game like this, your big guys that are good athletes, they've got to bring it. And again, if Race plays a little bit closer to his potential, that's a difference of 3 or 4 points.
That drive when he gave up the offensive rebound and then he closed out in the corner and the guy drove baseline on him just showed that he wasn't, for whatever reason, he just wasn't locked in. Now, he got better as the game went on, and that's something good. You trust a kid. You're never going to play perfect ball all the time, but those 2 things were unrace-like. And in the second half, you really saw him blocking out in free throw. He must have got ripped at halftime because he was knocking the guy 8 feet back on free throw blockouts. But you can't give up 8 points like that at the beginning of a game against a quality opponent on the road.
I will say this, I will say this. At least this time, Archie took a timeout before it ballooned.
Correct.
Because we've seen those runs become 17-0.
Go to 16-3.
And it's like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And at least they stopped it, and the team responded and got right back in the game. That was at least
That's a
progress.
great adjustment Archie's made this year is he's willing to use his timeouts. in any situation if things are going
agree.
badly to stem the tide. That is a positive development. What I will say about Race, I thought he started the game horribly. I thought everybody started the game horribly. That 8-3 start was just guys not playing. It was almost like they didn't know the game had started. They were just bewildered looking around. Immediately after that timeout, it seemed like they focused in. It was like they had retipped and they got it back to 8-8, I think. But Race Thompson, I thought, had stretches in the second half where he played very well. He was completely outmanned by the big man. I keep forgetting his name, but completely outmanned. Koprivica. It was a tough cover for him because the guy is so much bigger than him. It was impossible, but that doesn't change the fact that if you get out positioned, that's your fault. If the guy make the guy go over your back to get an offensive rebound. And if they give it to him, they give it to him. You have they did a couple times.
Or at least keep him from getting the offensive rebound. Don't worry about rebounding yourself. Just block him out.
Now, offensively, he was never going to do anything against that guy because his one move is a jump hook to the middle, and it's just not going to happen. I thought there were a couple times he should have taken a three-pointer when he was wide open on the perimeter. I mean, at least make him see that and come out. Maybe you make it. He's made one earlier this year.
He was just off that over halftime turnover could have been really dangerous in a close game.
That was bad.
He didn't make a decision. And Trayce, you go to overtime and Trayce outlets the ball that's stolen by their freshman. Now, is that just a good play by their freshman or a bad play by Trayce? I think it
was a soft
pass. And then Finney's needs to come back as well.
Yeah.
But those are the kinds of things that when you lose by 2 in overtime, just really that keeps a coach and it keeps players up at night because that right there wins the ball game if you just make a regular outlet. And
Trayce got screwed there.
Things,
it was a great block. After he threw that pass.
That defensive play, that was a clean block, 100%.
And that's where the officials got really last 8 minutes. I thought they were really
everything was a foul.
Poor.
Yeah.
I got to say though, toward the end of the game, I love it when a game gets really good and really tight and really exciting late, and then we get to stop for like 6 minutes so the refs can watch TV and try to figure something out.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like I get a review when it's a really important call, but like when it's a clock issue and it takes you 6 minutes to figure out, it's like on that a perfect one was on a shot clock violation. Billis even said he's like, all you do is you say what time the clock went off, and then that's your time. Why is this taking so long? It's such a good point because there's a stop point for the clock at that point. Like, it's just it took the moment, and then after Trayce Jackson-Davis made those 2 free throws, they had that long review. And that took all the momentum away. Or was his tip in when he had the tip in late? Took all the momentum away from Indiana. Look, there were a lot of things that went wrong tonight, but I do think in the end, Indiana is, as we thought before the year, would be better, and I think they are better. There are some warts they definitely need to clean up. The offense, giving up that many offensive rebounds is criminal. I get you're playing an athletic team, but some of that you felt like they were in scramble mode instead of just block your guy out and the ball will fall in front of you, and and then I also think that the shooting, these guys cannot psych themselves out. We know Rob Finney can shoot threes. We've seen it. His form is fine. He cannot rush and hurry every time.
It's got to be mental.
It is
either individually mental 100%. Or coach putting too much pressure or something because you
100%.
You just don't miss those shots.
It's just
short-handed.
For me, it's a lack of confidence, and I think he's rushing because it's like I got to get the shot off. Al took one where he dribbled into it from about 22 feet or something. He should have driven that ball because his guy flew right by him. And they're just small decisions and then rush shots. Now, look, Trey Galloway, I'm not saying he's rushing it. He's just missing it because his shot looks terrible right now. It looks like I told the guys, it looks like half a Jordan Hall's shot, and the half he's missing is the half that goes in. It's just, I mean, and then Armand Franklin, I've said this before, Armand Franklin steps inside the free throw line or steps inside the 3-point line. His shot looks great, steps beyond it, and it's like he is a completely different person.
His form is not bad at all.
Well, inside the 3-point line, it's great. From behind the 3-point line, I'm not sure if I agree with you. Yeah. And so I think he's palming the ball behind and putting too much energy behind it instead of just letting it flow. But other than that, I mean, Al and Rob should be making threes. They should be making threes.
I love critiquing every single shot for him, the confidence. But other than that, I mean, outside of everybody not being able to shoot, things are fine.
And it's, again.
And it's not just the 3-point shot, guys. It's at the rim.
No.
I mean, they were 8
that
of
I expected,
29.
though.
at the rim. So
I
it's one
expected
more,
that.
or it's a dump down, or it's a keep your dribble and dribble back out.
Now that part's true.
They're taking off-balance shots against size. They're not.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're square up and they go in strong and they're fading.
I thought it would be a good night if they were
rim.
50% at the rim against these guys. I thought it would be a good night if they were 50%.
Yeah, they were close then, 11 for
Yeah.
23.
Just because they're so big and athletic that it's hard to get to the rim against them.
Go through
the place,
people.
the place what they should do and what you should be doing. And Armand Franklin did this late. It was the first possession of overtime. I think he drove in and handed the ball to Trayce Jackson-Davis because he couldn't get the post entry, and Jackson-Davis went to work and scored.
Or you know what Rob did? Tried to dunk.
Yeah,
that was the best drive. Just
it was great.
go.
I know.
Yeah.
And you get
If
fouled.
You get your stuff thrown, come back again.
Yeah. Make them redirect you from the basket. Don't redirect yourself.
And try to go over three people, and that's what's disappointing.
Well, Lander had one. I think it was Lander's only shot where he drove in and just tried to finesse one, and it was just like, come on, buddy.
Not a good game for that
against these guys.
Now
against Northwestern, you can do that. Now against these guys, you can't.
Can't do that against Northwestern. Not with my girth and length.
Coach is feisty over there.
Got to bring some real action if I'm in the post.
That's right. Okay, let's take a break. Coming up on the assembly call, we're going to hand out our game balls. That's going to be pretty easy. We'll do a Mike Roberts game ball tonight, too, for Coach. And then we'll hit a few other lingering storylines, and we'll look ahead to Indiana's next opponent. All of that coming up on the assembly call. Stick with us.
What's up, y'all? It's Devontae Green, giving you the green light to watch Assembly Call after every IU game. Just don't listen to their opinions about shot selection. Remember, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Go Hoosiers.
You score 30 points. The next time we play that opponent, you get all the intros and outros. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. You can catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. We have over 7,000 fellow IU fans just like you subscribe to that newsletter. You can also text IU to 66866. That's IU to 66866, and that'll subscribe you to the newsletter as well. I'm Jerod Morris here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips. We are breaking down Indiana's 69-67 loss to Florida State. Gentlemen, it is time for game balls. And I think this is going to be a theme this season where it's really obvious when Trayce Jackson-Davis has a game like tonight. Which is why, in my absence, I think Coach decided to start. What is it? Is it the Mike Roberts game ball, which is kind of the second best guy,
bulldog?
The bulldog. But let's start with the game ball, and let's just use it as a chance to talk a little bit more about Trayce Jackson-Davis. You know, we talked about him off the top in the banner moment. You know, and it's kind of been sprinkled throughout. It was just terrific, and really, you know, kind of the big flaw from this game is he just needed more touches. He needed the ball more, and I thought, you know, early in the game, he wasn't quite as assertive as I thought he could have been. He only had 4 shots in the first half. You know, it's kind of one of those things coming out of halftime. It's like, okay, how are we going to get him the ball more? Because he's finishing strong at the hoop. We're just not getting him opportunities. And they did that more at times in the second half, but down the stretch, not enough. But, you know, those 2 free throws that he hit for a guy who is not a shooter, who has struggled with free throws, to step up and coolly knock down those 2 free throws to tie the game, those were big shots. And I think that says a lot about just his ability now as a sophomore to be a little bit more mature. Again, a guy who struggled on the road a lot last year, you know, and struggled those first, you know, a couple games in Asheville, but it really now these last couple games has really come on strong and looks like the leader and bona fide All-America candidate that Indiana needs him to be. And this team does not have the guard play that it needs. You know, Race Thompson is still kind of an up and down player. There's a lot of question marks across the roster. If Indiana wants to win games like tonight, they need this kind of effort from Trayce Jackson-Davis. That's table stakes. You know, that's just to have a shot. Now, the rest of it fell flat tonight, but it wasn't because of him. So he obviously gets the game ball and really delivered a great performance against a really tough defensive team.
Given the opponent... Go ahead.
I think the thing that I'm going to say is going to his right. He's made some couple nice moves, strong moves with confidence going to his right. He's also catching the ball in that short post and that short pick and roll. Not a lot tonight because of their switching. Didn't really allow that, but he's catching and driving like the last play where he got fouled for the 2 free throws. So he's expanded his game. We've seen a 15-foot jumper from him. So he has gotten better. It's all now about demanding the ball, working hard to get those good angles. They loved him on the coverage tonight. I thought it was just an outstanding night, but we need that every night, and he's just fun to watch while we have him, and I like the way he's added to his game.
That's called growth. Trayce Jackson-Davis has grown as a player. He is a better player foundationally than he was last year. And what I loved about it, and quite frankly, given the opponent, given the size of the opponent, given the stakes of the game, their ranking and what Indiana's trying to do, all that, this might be the best game of his career, given the opponent. And 25 and 17 rebounds, 7 of those offensive against that size. He was in attack mode tonight, and yeah, it took him a little bit to get into the game. And in the first half, they didn't even give him touches. I mean, they were trying, but then they worked out that they needed to do some pick and roll stuff, and the pick, pass, and go down to him instead of pick and throw directly to the roll man. It was a great adjustment by Indiana and Archie Miller to start doing that. And when they do that more in the Big Ten, where teams are not going to be as equipped to handle that as a team with the length of Florida State was, they're going to kill teams on that. Absolutely. And what's going to happen is everybody's going to suck down when they see the pick and roll happening, and it's going to leave other people open to make plays. That was a fantastic performance by Trayce Jackson-Davis. He was the best player on the floor on either team, including Walker, including all those other guys. He was the best player on the floor all night, and it showed. And he got national exposure, played really well. And this is the kind of guy, I hope it gives him confidence going forward to know that he can do this every game. There are very few people on Indiana's schedule who are going to even be even to him, let alone better than him. And I don't think anybody's going to be better than him in that position. He's just going to face some guys where it's going to be a showdown. But for the most part, he's going to be much better than everybody he's facing, and he should dominate like this.
He remains number 2 currently on the Ken Pom Player of the Year rater after only Luka Garza. So great start to the season for Trayce. All right, Coach, so what are we calling this other award? Is this we can't call it the Mike Roberts Grinder. That's like too much of a John Gruden thing. So we need a name for it.
Mike Roberts is Awesome Award. Mike Roberts President Award. As long as it has Mike Roberts.
Okay, we're not leaving Coach in charge of naming things. The ideas are good. Okay, we need some names from the chat mob for what we call this segment. But I'm down with giving a second award, especially on nights when Trayce Jackson-Davis wins it. And if we're going to give a second award tonight, to me, it obviously goes to Armaan Franklin, who was terrific on defense for most of the night, and kind of did Armaan Franklin things where he has 9 points, 8 rebounds, had an assist, did have 3 turnovers. I mean, it wasn't a perfect night for him by any means. But I want to, something
one of those should have been a timeout, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's true. One thing that has really jumped out watching him and watching Rob, and again, we talked about this earlier, there were a good portion of the game tonight, Armaan was bringing the ball up the court and kind of initiating the offense. With Armaan, he is really aggressive off the dribble. He goes until the defense stops him. And if that means he can go all the way to the hoop, he is going to go all the way to the hoop, whether he's got the ball in transition, whether it's in the half court. The difference between Armaan and Rob Phinisee is Rob Phinisee goes until he feels uncomfortable going anymore. And there are times when Rob won't push it in transition, or there was a play, I don't remember when it was. I think it was early in the second half, and Rob was dribbling. They were trying to do a ball screen, and Florida State's defenders got kind of confused. And Rob had just open court in front of him. And instead of going all the way to the lane, he kind of stopped dribbling and double clutched and threw this little weird pass over to Trayce Jackson-Davis, who was covered. And Trayce got it, and I think he got fouled and scored. But it's Rob, just go to the lane. And so there are times I feel like, and I think it's a confidence thing, a feel thing, whatever it is, but Rob kind of stops himself or doesn't take full advantage of what's there. And what impresses me about Armaan early in his career is he really does that, and obviously he's got to become a better shooter. People are going to sag off of him and not give him as much of those opportunities. But his aggressiveness and kind of secondary playmaking is really important for an Indiana team that really doesn't have a ton of that in the backcourt. And so we saw Indiana's guards really try to do that tonight. I thought of all of them, Armaan was probably the best. Al did have 4 assists, so credit to him for that. But that's just something to watch with those two guys, and I think it's a skill that Indiana really needs that Armaan brings to the table. So he's my Mike Roberts is awesome award winner for tonight.
I can't name anything. I had a hard time naming my kids. I would say that I agree. I don't have a problem with Franklin. I think El Durham coming back off a high ankle sprain and playing 38 minutes, 5 rebounds, 4 assists could also be in consideration. I think he is doing what El Durham can do as a senior, being around for 4 years. I mean, he's not going to be an NBA type guard, that super finisher closer that we're looking for, but he can do a lot of things. So I thought I think both of those guards did everything possible except put the ball in the basket tonight to help Indiana win. I
thought they played as well as they can, honestly.
Yeah. I think they can shoot better.
No, they can shoot better.
Yeah, they can.
But yeah, I mean, I thought they guarded. I thought, it's really good when you don't see Al. Al made one. Al gave up a 3 in the corner. At least maybe it was Al covering for someone, but on transition, someone ran the baseline and no one covered him, and Al tried to run out there. So you might get mad at Al because he's the one trying to cover it up, or maybe it was
Al's big mix-up.
But it was a big mix-up on that fast break. There's another 3. But anyway, I thought Al played well for coming back from an injury, and we needed him tonight, obviously, because of the type of game you needed that senior leadership. So we'll leave it to Ryan. I'll vote for Al, and we got to vote for Franklin. You get to break the tie.
I'm going to go with Franklin just because of the defensive ability changes it for me.
2 games in a row against a 5-star.
Yeah, and I thought he played really well, and I don't think there's anything he could have done on that last shot. That's just a good player making a good play who's bigger than you and has a clear lane to shoot over you. I just think that was a good play. One thing I wanted to point out, though, if we're talking about the guards and playing to the best of their ability, taking off the composite because I think I trust 24/7 more than the composite. Rob Finney was a 4-star ranked 118th. Armand Franklin was a 4-star ranked 139th. And Al Durham was a 3-star ranked 177th. Those aren't NBA guards. Those aren't top-tier Big Ten recruit guards. But I would say that they're guys who can develop into a Big Ten, all Big Ten player by their senior year, maybe by their junior year. Armand Franklin has holes in his game because was the 139th ranked player in the nation. Those guys don't come ready-made to dominate. So he's going to have holes in his game that he has to iron out year by year. Al Franklin or Al Durham, we've seen his development over 4 years to become a guy who's a reliable starter. It's taken that long, though, because he was a 3-star, ranked 177th nationally. Rob Finney has his warts. 118th. You're not getting guys.
Why Lander needs to get going.
Yes. Yeah, and it's going to.
Lander nedoes to get going.
I agree.
For the team to unlock their ceiling.
Yes,
that's the thing. These guys,
they're doing what they can. They're just not.
Yes, I like all
players.
of them as players, but on a really good to great Indiana team, those guys are role players, but they're being asked to play star player minutes and have usage levels that are just a little bit above in a big game. Now, look, I think against a lot of teams in the Big Ten, those guys are going to be okay. Yeah, I think they'll be fine. But as you start creeping up into the top 20, the top 15, the top 10, and competing in those games,
you need more from them.
Yeah, you're asking those guys to do more really than they're capable of doing. And you need a star with the ball in his hands, and that's what Indiana's missing right now. You've got a star on the block. You don't have the guy in the backcourt.
Yep. Exactly. They are part of the get old and stay old.
Yes.
That is the core pieces of your team that are really solid players and could be starters, could be coming off the bench, but that's part of that get old. You need those 4 stars. You need those 4-year players that develop and get the most out of their game. But you also need 2 or 3 really talented, and we have a couple of them right now, and one's just young and needs to be developed, and it'll be interesting to see how fast that happens. But we're only at our best if Lander develops and can play in these types of games, in my opinion.
So here's what I'll say. Veteran 3-star, 3 to 4-star guys, like plus 100 guys, the veteran guys who stick around for 3-4 years, they're the backbone of your program. You just need guys who can do more things to help you win sometimes, like hit an open 3-pointer. You need to develop that into them. Like these guys Al as a senior, Rob as a junior needs to be able to hit a wide open 3. I'm not saying they need to shoot 40% from 3. But when you have a wide open 3 with no one around you, you got to make that. And so it's a matter of the development as well. But those guys do become the backbone of your program. And then what you do is you go out and you get the high 4-star, 5-star guy. You go out and get this guy, and you plug them in around the guys you build to be veterans. That's how you build a really deep, good program. Indiana's missed on a few guys and needs to have guys who can knock down open jumpers. And hopefully that continues to get better. And hopefully, they bring in a shot doctor. I'm at the
Always
point where
comes back to the shot doctor.
I'm at the
I
point
think we
where
might need a shot surgeon at this point. Like I think we're past needing a doctor.
I'm seriously at the point where I don't care if it's me anymore. I just want somebody.
So this whole time it was only about you. It wasn't about the shooting. It was just about you. But
now, a little bit of both.
Now you're willing to.
Well, I knew I could do it. I trusted myself to get the job done. That's the thing, Jerry.
As did we all. Okay. Well, the Mike Roberts is Awesome Award goes to Armand Franklin tonight.
That needs a new name.
But I don't know. The chat mob didn't really come through. There was like the Robust Roberts Award, and someone just said the Mike Roberts Award, which, I mean, yeah. Well, we could have come up with that one ourselves. All right. Any other storylines from this one, gents? Before we move on, there's not much to look ahead to. Indiana's playing North Alabama next.
Here's something I'll ask you guys too, because I know I don't disagree with you about Hunter playing the 3. I thought he would play some 3 this year. It's obvious right now they're not. Is that a function of not having Joey? That they're just going to play that 3-man rotation in the post?
Might be.
Do you guys see that Hunter might be able to play some 3 and 4 and get some Galloway minutes once they have a post sub to come in?
I'll be honest, guys. I don't expect to see Joey anytime soon. Archie did not sound optimistic on that when the other day when he talked to the media.
So that could be a reason why he's not playing.
Maybe.
I mean, that may be. That may be, and in a lot of games, that may be fine. But like, you also have to go with the flow of the game. And the guy came ready to play and ready to shoot tonight, and you needed someone who's going to make shots. Like, I think I tweeted, like, with 5 minutes left in the second half, if we just make a few outside shots, we're going to win this game. And we would have. We made 2. Rob made a shot and Al made a shot, but we needed another one or, a couple more. And I feel like you got to find minutes for him there. If it's at the 3, if you maybe give Race, a little bit of a break, and I realize you're going to give up a little bit of something on defense there, but, if you're going to run a shot
you're
for
not
Hunter.
Gonna. Because Galloway was getting beaten all the time. I don't think that Hunter would have guarded the 3 any worse tonight.
Yeah.
And so that validates your point.
Yeah. All right. So let's look ahead to North Alabama. Hopefully this is a game where, seriously, I mean, this is Indiana's last game against, a team that they should beat easily. North Alabama is ranked 246th in KenPom. Up until now, they have not played a Division I opponent, so they beat Carver 107-40. They're going to play Troy Thursday, so they'll have one game against Division I competition before Indiana. But what do you guys look for in a game like that? To me, I don't think there's anything Trayce Jackson-Davis. Okay, wait, there is one thing I want to talk about real quick before we get to that. That's a lot more meaningful than talking about North Alabama. I saw a quote from Trayce that someone had in the chat mob. Did you guys see this yet?
Yeah, something about this year. He wants this year's team to be different, so he got on guys after the game. We got to win games like this. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, here it is.
But it ended in all love or something like
that. From Coach Marlowe. In between Coach Marlowe screaming about playing Christian Lander more, he put this he put this comment in the chat. I'm trying to be different this year. To be different, we've got to win these games. Kind of got into some guys, was upset, but at the end of the day, it was all love. That is music to all of our ears. Look.
Leadership.
Look. Al Durham, Rob Finnessy, Race Thompson, and Joey Brunk are the captains of this team. Trayce Jackson-Davis is the leader.
Yeah, let's be real.
I mean, he's the best player, and if he is actually going to bring it every game, and if he's going to get vocal and do some of those things, his voice is going to be the one that carries the most weight. And so if he's ready to step into that role, I think it's huge for Indiana.
Yeah, lead by example, and then lead, with your mouth as well. But see, if he plays like he did tonight, those words aren't hollow. And that's the thing is that
back-to-back games, actually.
Yeah, and he can get into guys because it's like, look,
I'm doing
25 points, 17 boards. Join me.
Yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing where that was my doorbell, by the way. It's the kind of thing where
a little late for visitors, isn't it?
Well,
DoorDash
food.
Oh, okay.
It's the kind of thing where when you prove it on the court, you can lead. There's a lot of times where guys talk a lot and talk about leadership and all that. He's leading from the front and then saying, hey, I need some help. I need some lieutenants around me. So I think that it's fair to do that. And, there were things in this game, and he knows it, where the plays where they could have won.
Kent Davis has suggested Roberts Rough Rider. Certainly scores for the alliteration.
Yeah, let's just call it the Mike Roberts Award. I think that's fine.
That feels like such a give up. No, we got to.
Why don't we put a Twitter poll out? with
Fine.
like 5 options.
Okay, well, we've got one option right now, so it's going to be a very short bowl. But
I just wanted to honor some guys. I didn't want to cause chaos.
That's okay. That's okay. It's still early in the season.
You're
We have
tearing the
time
assembly
for this.
call family apart.
I am trying to do the right thing.
All right,
So in the South Alabama game, what
North
do you
North
watch?
Alabama.
Alabama.
Put
North
some
Alabama,
respect on their name, Phillips. Okay, so what do you watch from this? Like Trayce Jackson-Davis could sit this game out for all I care.
Yeah, I agree.
And keep him healthy. To me, it's very. I mean, the number one thing you're watching in this game is Christian Lander. I mean, because his development remains. Look, I know we talked a lot about Christian Lander last time I was on the show, or whenever. I guess you guys talked about that article that I wrote about Christian Lander and how important his development is. That is all very true. I did not expect anything from him in this game. On the road, tough physical team. I didn't think he'd be ready for this. And I think in a game like this, you don't give him as many minutes, Ryan, to your point earlier. I think the amount they played him tonight was fine. But as you start...
Give him a chance, see what happens, and then pull him if it's not there.
But in a game like North Alabama, I think you try and get him 22, 25 minutes. And in some games where the speed is a little bit more what he can play at right now, you let him play through some mistakes. You don't want to do that in a game like this because you're trying to pull out all the stops to win it. So that to me is the number one thing. I
think all the freshmen should get run.
Yes, but his is the most important. And then can we maybe get right shooting? Like maybe just have a confidence building shooting night? I don't know, like 9 for 22, which isn't great, but I mean, I think we'd all take. So this is the kind of game where you can rebuild some confidence shooting wise. And I think if we see those two things, positive signs from Lander and just something positive to take from the shooting, I'll be happy.
And I think after 4 intense games, like 4 really intense games in a row, maybe just having some fun, like, you know what I mean? Like getting a chance where they can be smiling on the court instead of just intense, will be good for the team to kind of build that confidence and that camaraderie of, instead of just being clenched the entire time, like maybe have a chance to get out and run a little bit, maybe have a chance to have some dunks and hit some big shots. So it's a chance to really enjoy themselves a little bit.
You don't want to have a letdown.
No, of course not. No, I mean, once you get going.
A lot defensively, and some of the stuff they're doing offensively, you got to maintain against the letdown against North Alabama after playing 4 straight games where you had to lock in. You could lose a lot in a game like that too. You've seen some of the Big Ten teams that are close at halftime in some of these bye games, and it's nerve-wracking for the fans and everything. Keep the defense, play a lot of people, get some stuff on film maybe you want to test out. In general, don't want to give away the farm against North Alabama. The expectation is to keep going. I think this is a fun team to watch. I don't like losing. I think we shouldn't tonight, but you want to make sure you're making progress.
Yep. Okay, you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that you need to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel to get the perfect gift for the college sports fan in your life. Use the promo code Assembly20 at checkout. You'll get 20% off your entire order, and get that order in soon, like maybe right now, tonight, December 9th, but get it in by December 10th at the latest so that you are guaranteed to get it by Christmas. All right, guys, it is time for last call. Ryan just had a pizza delivered. Somewhere Chad is very upset that he has still not been able to do this to Andy, but Ryan is over here getting pizzas delivered during the show.
My camera not aimed towards the door.
Yeah, not aimed, so we really didn't get to enjoy that. But kudos to you for getting a pizza. So why don't you lead off so then you can,
go
leave.
Eat it while it's still hot.
You can go to the locker room with 2 minutes left on the clock.
Well, look, I thought it was a well-played game. I thought that Indiana showed it's capable of competing with teams like this. The next step is to show it can beat teams like this consistently, and didn't do it against Texas, but played much better against what I think is a better Florida State team, and almost had it, and probably should have won it late, as we outlined the problems at the top of the show. If you're just catching us now, go back to the beginning. We outlined why they lost this game. This is a team that needs to get over that hump. And it needs to be able to consistently, not just once every 20 games, pull out a game like this, but consistently show up and win these games. That's how you get into the top tier of the Big Ten, and it's how you advance the program forward. So some of those recruits you miss on who might be able to do the things you need, see this program and say, oh, they're going places. Look at the turnaround. Look where they're going, and decide to join. And that's where you get some shooters on campus, apparently. But I would say that I thought that Indiana showed the one thing that has been a problem over the last couple of years is showing consistent energy and effort. And there have been lulls in games where guys aren't focused, whatever. That has not been a problem so far this year. This team is locked in and trying to play hard. Now, there'll be lulls in scoring and, maybe a few defensive lapses here and there, whatever. That's going to happen in college basketball. That's why it's so tough to win big games. But at the same time, this team is showing a lot more heart, a lot more energy, and a lot more effort at all times during games. And the defense is a legit top defense in the nation. The offense just has to be consistent and follow that. And they've got to get used to when things break down, the default position is give it to your best player on the block and let him go to work, or get him the ball far away from the basket, let him go to work. Trayce Jackson-Davis is that good. This team needs to default into making sure they get him the ball every time they can.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Pizza time. Give Madeline our best.
Damn straight.
Hope tell her we said we hope she's feeling better.
All right, we'll do that.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, Ryan's gone to eat some pizza.
San Diego chicken.
Definitely a chicken blank move, but that's okay. All right. Coach, last call on this IU performance.
I'm enjoying watching this team. I'm frustrated that they're 3-2. I think they at least should have won this game. And it's fun to be disappointed again, in losses instead of just frustrated after losses. So many times in the last 2 or 3 years, 4 years where, you're out of it with 10, 11 minutes to go and you're just hoping the score is somewhat respectable and you go on 12-minute droughts. And every one of these players I enjoy. I enjoy the competitiveness. I don't enjoy some of the execution that needs to be better to win games like this. But the good thing, Jerod, is you're playing Power 5 teams and pretty good Power 5 teams, which will make you better for a real tough road in the Big Ten. And now it's up to the team and the players and the coaching staff to continue to grow in order to win games like this. It's not enough to be close. It's not enough to just be 7th, 8th in the Big Ten. You gotta make these games count by going and winning some now, instead of losing in overtime. But as far as a bracketology, this isn't a bad loss. It's a lost opportunity. You have 2 Power 5 wins. You have 2 Power 5 losses to top 20 teams. I think they have shown people, if you're looking at the eye test, which I think is going to be more this year than the stats and the net, that Indiana's eye test is at least a tournament team. And I know that's not acceptable. We want to be a better than that, but get over that floor at least a little bit. I think they're fun. I think we're going to win a lot more games. I think we're going to be a little more competitive on the road. I don't see us going backwards. I keep seeing us go forwards because of the fight that I saw tonight and some of the adjustments the players are making and some of the adjustments that coaching is making. So it's given me a little bit of reprieve. I was worried after Texas that was that on the road against Rutgers getting beat by 19 problems that we've had. It hasn't gone away totally yet. One game doesn't make that go away yet. But tonight was a big test for me to see if we can go in there and compete, or we're going to have another clunker. So it's a huge step in the right direction for me, and I hope we get the next 2 games in, and I hope we go uninterrupted. With the football team being paused and a lot of crazy stuff going on in Indiana. Cherish these guys. And try to remember that the other option is not watching these guys and watching Hallmark with Mrs. Tonsoni. So, being here with you and the chat mob.
So Mrs. Tonsoni is really cherishing these guys.
Exactly. She wants them to keep going forward.
Look, I tweeted this before the game. I was really worried about this game. I was not going to be surprised if we lost this game by 15, 20 points. I just thought, especially after the Texas game, there were so many elements of this matchup that really seemed not good for Indiana. And that in and of itself, as we look at things from a macro perspective, that's not a good sign, frankly, for where the program is at. Like, we shouldn't go into a game against a Florida State team that's good, but they're not great. They're a top 25 team, but they're not a great team. We shouldn't go into that game feeling like we're kind of, fighting with one hand tied behind our back because of, fears about the guard play and just going to struggle to compete. So from a macro level, obviously the program still has a ways to go to get it where we all want it to. But, as I watched the game, Coach, just viscerally, I found myself feeling the way you did. Like, I found myself really seeing a lot to like, and even though Al and Rob and Armand didn't do enough stuff, like, I saw guys trying to do the right things, and it's ironic. Last year you play this game at home. Devontae Green goes off for 30 points. It's unbelievable. I mean, it was, obviously one of the most memorable moments of the season and a huge game for Devontae. But Devontae was also a guy that was so up and down and sometimes was trying to do the right things and sometimes wasn't trying to do the right things. And you kind of had to live with it. But it made the experience of watching that team such a roller coaster ride, and it's kind of felt like we've been on that roller coaster ride for the last 3 years. What I feel like we're going to see from this year's team is a steadying out of that roller coaster. I think the floor of this team is so much higher than the floor of Archie's previous 3 teams because of the defense. Because, I'm worried about the shooting. I'm worried about the lack of guard play. I'm worried about some other things, but I'm not worried about our fight. I'm not worried about whether we're going to come compete. I'm not worried about whether the defense is just going to look overmatched. Not worried about the togetherness. Not worried right now. I'm really not worried about the internal leadership. I think, you have some guys stepping up, and obviously Trayce Jackson-Davis is evolving. That's the kind of stuff that's the foundation of a program. And I think a lot of the frustration IU fans have had is you deal with these losses over the first 3 seasons, and it's like, okay, but are we actually building this foundation that we need? The way I feel after 5 games is things feel a little bit more firm. The ceiling isn't there. I don't know if this team can make a Sweet 16. I don't know if this team can make the top 4 of the Big Ten. Those are my expectations. Those are my standards. I don't know if they can actually get there. But I'm finding myself liking this team. I like the way they play together. I like some of the pieces, even if the pieces don't necessarily fit into the roles they're being asked to play. And that's not their fault. That's a roster management. That's a larger issue. So I have a lot of macro questions. As you guys know who've watched this show, we deal with macro questions in the offseason, and we meet this team where it's at in the season on a game-by-game basis. And I'm disappointed in the loss. I think it was a lost opportunity, like you said. But I found some stuff to like tonight, and I really like the way that these guys played. And, they can't shoot, man. They can't do some basic stuff that you need to be able to do. But the identity that Archie's trying to build, you can start to see it materializing a little bit more with these guys than I think we've seen in the past. Now, we're only 5 games in. It's a long season. We got to see what happens from here on out. But, I think if you're walking away from this game disappointed and pissed off at the missed opportunity, but also, kind of pleased at some of the stuff you saw. I don't think you're a pansy, taking solace in a moral victory. I think it's just, kind of a realistic view of where this team's at right now. So some things to be optimistic about. Hopefully they come out against North Alabama, use that opportunity as best they can, because the road is going to get really tough from there. And we'll see. I certainly think that we have a team that's going to compete on a night-in, night-out basis. Now we'll go see how many games they can win. But if they play defense like this, they're going to be in a lot of games, and they just got to make shots to win them. We'll see if they can develop that as the season goes along. All right. And hey, by the way, tomorrow night, Assembly Call Radio, that's our next show. Tony Adranya, Coach Tony Adranya is going to be on with us. Andy will be here, so you'll get Andy's thoughts on this game, do a little Coach's Corner with Coach Tonsoni and Coach Adranya. That'll be fun. Ryan will still be eating pizza. I'll be away, but we'll be back soon for you too. So hope you'll join us then. Okay, if you want to see us do the show, that's going to do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you to Bob Thompson, who produces a lot of the music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you tomorrow night on Assembly Call Radio. Until then.
Take it from the green light himself. Keep your elbows in, eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
Here I come, Mrs. Tonsoni.
Shoot the ball.
My new favorite Andy Bottoms drop from last week's Assembly Call Radio.
What are you looking around for? Shoot the ball.
Something we didn't mention, too, was at 9:54, that guy fell down in the lane with 1 second on the shot clock, got up. He really traveled, and then threw his hands into our defender and got 2 foul shots. I mean, yeah. I don't like blaming officials and everything, but, that's a bailout on a guy that was great. We had a few possessions today, Jerod, where we played great defense and a loose ball found its way into points for them. And that's the disappointing and the frustrating thing is you can't control that official's call. You can't control where the ball bounces when you knock it out. and the guy catches it at the 3-point line and he throws up a three. Man, in tough games, you go back and those things just, man, I'll replay that over and over. Some of those just 50-50. That guy, I mean, at the end, Armand does everything possible. The guy traveled again there on the Euro step, and that's not a good shot. That's the shot you kind of want to take, and it goes in. So, I don't want to be moral victory dude. I'm not that dude.
No, it's a loss, but
anything about football?
Well, I don't know, but we do need to wish Libby Torfey a happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
For sure. Like one of the OG IU basketball fans, as Coach knows, someone that you want to watch a game with.
Absolutely.
I still want to get her on the show. So she's got a, hopefully she knows she's got an open invitation to come on the show anytime. We will bump
My right arm was bruised
anytime.
for weeks. My right arm was bruised for weeks after sitting next to her that game when we beat Michigan State.
She's intense. I mean, she has seen some good teams. You are not going to fool Libby Torfey with bad basketball. She has seen some good teams. You are not going to fool her. I don't know. Do we want to talk football? I will say this. If you haven't listened to the Crimson Cast with Galen and Chronic Hoosier, that's a very cathartic listen. They really, kind of spelled everything out really well, I think. There's nothing that I'm going to say that is even going to compete with the eloquence that they kind of put it all with. So I will just recommend that you listen to their show because it was excellent. But I'm pissed off.
I will challenge people. Don't let it take away from the great year that we've had. And once you get your shouts out on Twitter and everything, focus the attention back on Coach Allen and the guys for what they've done, which is really create an excellent atmosphere for football. And the only thing that, I don't like necessarily the decision. I can understand, this and that. But the bottom line is, when Indiana wins the Big Ten and goes to the Rose Bowl, I don't want it to be in a shortened year. I don't want it to be with an asterisk that we got in because there was a rule technicality. I'd love it when we kick everyone's ass and then go to the Rose Bowl. So I'm looking at it as a silver lining. It didn't go our way. We can't control it. So next year when we got all of these dudes back and we play in the Big Ten championship after going 12-0 or 11-1 or whatever it's going to take next year, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable. So I challenge everyone. I know that Twitter's been crazy and we're all mad, but there is a silver lining. This program is 6-1. It's a top 12, which should be top 10 team, and it's going to go to a great bowl, and it's so much fun to watch. That the decision at the Big Ten is not getting in the way of me thinking it's a great program led by a great man with great players. So I'm not putting my energy on complaining anymore. It happened, flush it, and then just get ready to kick Iowa's ass and get some more wins. But part of me didn't want a technicality because then everyone say, oh, yeah, IU won the Big Ten only because of a rule. I want it to be on the field. And so
I'll take
for
both.
what it's worth, if that helps some people get over this, backstabbing, then hopefully, I don't know. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's probably all that needs to be said.
Turn your butt cheeks on.
Except for that one. I've been waiting to be back on the show so I could use that one. All right, Coach, thanks for being here. Thanks, everybody, for being here and for listening. Thank you, Chat Mob. By the way, can anybody round up all of the suggestions for the Mike Roberts Award? I know there are a bunch of them in there. If anybody wants to round those up, then maybe we can do a poll or see if there's any good ones. Need a good name for that segment. But otherwise, come join us for Assembly Call Radio tomorrow night, and we will talk to you guys soon.
See ya.